Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Good afternoon. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone is well and looking forward to an awesome weekend. As I mentioned in my last podcast on Tuesday, I was just getting over feeling under the weather, and hopefully, as you can hear, I'm doing better. I'm still not 100% in terms of my vocal, but a lot better than it was a few days ago, so that's a great sign. So today I'm going to go over a few things. I'm going to give a little bit of a preamble, I guess, to some opinions and observations I have real estate-wise, and then we'll deviate into a couple other topics toward the end of the podcast. So the two things that came to mind that I thought would be interesting to discuss, one is the upcoming or ongoing acquisition/merger. Compass Real Estate, who's a large entity that's grown quite rapidly over about the last 10 years. They're noted for their aggressive posture and expansion, agent recruitment, and also high-tech opportunities for their agents and consumers, as they put it in their marketing. They've acquired the Anywhere organization, and Anywhere is and I might be slightly making a mistake on the names of the corporations, but Anywhere and Realogy are kind of the same company, and they have a bunch of tentacles underneath them, meaning that they're the owners of Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Corcoran, ERA, Better Homes and Gardens, to mention a few. I might be leaving one or two out, but nonetheless, they're probably the largest real estate organization in terms of the number of agents under their control, and all their divisions have been around for a while and are pretty well known. Also, I think Christie's Auction was another division under them. So in essence, they're quite large, and they have a lot of name recognition throughout the United States. Some areas, obviously, one company's more popular than others, but they have a large footprint. So Compass has brought them under the Compass umbrella now, and it remains to be seen exactly how this all shakes out with how all these different divisions operate. One thing that came to mind, both from my own opinion and also reading some opinions of people that are analysts and experts in real estate, is the negative and positive impacts of this acquisition. Positive impact are, that they're growing the organization. They'll have more agents under their control. Theoretically, they can take advantage, depending on how they set their divisions up, with economies of scale. And of course, they'll be able to do a lot of cross or synergistic marketing in terms of benefiting all the tentacles of the organization, assuming that they all want to work together, because each division that I mentioned has established its own name recognition and brand recognition, et cetera. So that remains to be seen. But hopefully for those folks, that'll be a good thing. What are some of the things that I can see being a negative? Well, their size. How quickly will it take them to implement change? From an agent standpoint, do you want to be one of thousands and thousands of agents? The larger that organizations get historically, and this pertains to a lot of different industries, but real estate, I think, is one of the more known organizations that has to deal with this dichotomy is the personalization or lack thereof. When you're in a really large organization, I always feel you're like one of a number. You're like this great corporate conglomerate, and you're just one of many. So obviously, if you're like a superstar, one of the top 0.5% of agents, there's more value with the company retaining your services, but you still don't have the imprint that you may have if you were in a smaller organization and being a top producer. I'm not a big corporate person myself. Full disclosure, the company that I work with, Greater Orlando Realty, we became a tentacle earlier this year of Better Homes and Gardens. So it was not a decision that I had any input in, pro or con. And obviously there's pluses and minuses when you're part of a national franchise program. On a personal level, I've been doing real estate a long time. I've owned companies that were part of national organizations. And I've also obviously worked with an independent organization for a number of years until we became part of Better Homes and Gardens. My observations, generally speaking, is when you're part of a bigger organization, you potentially have access to more marketing assistance and things of that nature. However, by the same token, most of the marketing that these large organizations provide you comes at a cost. It's very rare that you get all these additional value-added services thrown in without a cost. And of course, with all of these national franchise organizations, you're typically paying a franchise fee to the company. So you as the agent have to determine for the additional services that you're getting and quote unquote the name recognition, is it worth the fee that you're paying the organization? At the same time, you have to determine what's going to make you most happy as an agent, meaning that do you like being a big fish in a small pond, or do you like being more of a smaller fish in a bigger pond? And that's up for the individual. I know myself, I'm not a big corporate person, and that's why I got into real estate, because I wanted my own autonomy. I wanted to be able to work out of an office or out of my house. I wanted to set my own hours. I wanted to hire my own support staff. I wanted to make my own decisions when it came to marketing, my commission offerings to customers. Really, anything that I do on a daily basis, I wanted it to be pretty much under my control. And of course, when you work with franchise companies, sometimes you relinquish part of that control because they may have more finite policies on some of these things. For example, myself, I've always adhered to the win-win philosophy, what I think is going to benefit me, what I think is going to benefit my customer, what I think is going to put a smile on everyone's face. And accordingly, way before we've had all these real estate controversies with new rules and regulations, I've always considered my commissions fully negotiable. Sometimes I offer commissions on a situational basis. It just depends on a lot of variables. How challenging is that house going to be to sell? How much extra work am I going to put into it? How many after-hours calls am I going to take? How many property condition issues am I going to have to deal with? Some customers require a lot more of my time to put them at ease with the process. So all these things are things that I factor in. And I may, offer one person a higher fee program than another person. It just really depends. But I like having the freedom to do that. Same thing when I'm working with buyers. when I feel that my buyer's loyalty is hard to determine. It's a buyer that's contacted various realtors and they put less value in their realtor's time and skill set. They would have been a person that I would have required a buyer representation agreement even before it became a requirement. Because if I felt that buyer didn't have the same value for me that I have for myself, I wasn't prone to work for that buyer unless they were willing to commit contractually to me. And of course, I explained all the benefits to them, that I'm going to, do all the services that I do, notify them as soon as anything happens that would benefit them, give them first notice when a new listing that meet their criteria comes up. There's just a lot of different things. And I wanted that loyalty in return. And if I didn't feel comfortable that that person valued my time and efforts, then I would decline working for them unless they signed a buyer representation agreement. So I had that autonomy to do that. And when it comes to sellers, again, I had the autonomy of what kind of commission I was going to offer. And I've always felt that very important. And I've always tried to ensure that my sellers felt it was a very equitable arrangement for them. I'll give you an analogy to another business. A lot of the real estate agents and companies charge what they call a processing or administrative fee, however you want to categorize it. And it might range, I've seen them go from about $300 to $700. And my company, has the same fee that other companies do. We're probably on the lower end, but we do have those. However, with my company, I have the option of whether I charge that to people or not. And obviously, I have certain expenses that I incur, and obviously, I have certain income objectives. But I do use that. I use that fee on a situational basis. I might be dealing with a customer that's really in a tight financial position, and in order to sell that house at a price that's going to sell, we need to try to put them in the most favorable position. So I may, when I sit down and go over my fees with them, I may automatically cancel out that administrative or processing fee just because I feel it'll help that seller achieve their objectives. On the other hand, I may have a customer, like I sold a house a few weeks ago to a customer that I've sold multiple homes to over the years and also sold some of their property. And they're a very loyal customer, and I enjoy working with them. I think they enjoy working with me, is why they keep contacting me. And I never charge them an admin or processing fee. They've never asked for a discount. I just have voluntarily excluded it. Why? Because I like to reward them for their loyalty and ongoing patronage. And I correlate that to when you're buying a new car. I would say most of the new car dealerships, if not all, have some kind of processing and handling fee. I don't even know what the terminology is nowadays, but it's strictly a profit or an add-on fee. And frequently it puts a bad taste in my mouth as a consumer. So when I look at new cars, I factor that in. Obviously, a lot of them charge that, so it depends upon how bad I want to buy that car with that particular dealer. But I've walked away from different car dealerships of cars that I was interested in because they were just inflexible in their negotiating. When I go on an appointment to buy a vehicle, I do my due diligence and research. What is the dealer's profit margin on that? How much in demand is that particular vehicle? How's the market for new cars, etc.? So I take all that into account, and I make a purchasing decision accordingly. I'll give an example of what happened years ago to me where I had to eat crow because I'm far from perfect. I'm opinionated, but not perfect. I was helping at the time my wife. At that time, we had been dating for a while, and she was looking for a very popular car in those days called a Mazda Miata. It was a sports car. And I offered my services to help her negotiate. I was going to be a big man on campus. I was an expert vehicle negotiator, and I was going to get her the best deal. And she wanted a cherry red Mazda convertible. And this is when Mazdas were pretty new back in the day. And their cherry red was their most popular model. So we went, and she found one she wanted to buy, and I negotiated, and they just wouldn't budge off a certain price. It was higher than I felt I should have to pay on her behalf for it. So I got up to leave, and I said, we're ready, willing, and able buyers, but not at the price that you're offering. And they wouldn't budge. So they took the position of one of two things. They either thought I was a lot of hot air, or they had way more demand than supply. So they could afford to go for a higher profit return on that particular vehicle. So I called another Mazda dealership, and I said, I'd like to come in and talk directly to the manager. I'm ready to buy a vehicle today. If we get the price that I'm happy with, we'll walk out of the dealership with a car, and I'll be a very easy sale for you. So I got into the dealership. Well, the first thing that happened that was different, even though the manager told me different things on the phone, he said, let me have Harry help you. Harry's my best salesman, and he'll take good care of you. Well, I automatically knew that that was not with my plan, because I was hoping to eliminate the salesman by dealing directly with the manager. And so obviously he didn't do that there, and probably their policy was to give all the prospective customers to their salesman. So went around, and, we knew the car already. We knew what we wanted. So again, my wife wanted that one. And so I tried the same strategy that I did with dealer number one. And the price to the penny was the same as dealer number one. And they wouldn't budge. So we walked out of there. Well, now I look like I was a lot of hot air. So I had to tell my wife that evidently these Mazdas, especially in the cherry red convertible, are so popular that they're not going below a certain price. So unfortunately, my strategy was unsuccessful. So we ended up going back to dealer number one because it was a more convenient location closer to our house. And we ended up buying dealer number one's vehicle at the price that they had quoted me the day previously. So I had a little bit of egg on my face and had to be kind of meek in dealing with the salesman there, because it didn't work the way I had planned it. So in that case, I don't remember if they had a handling and processing fee, but they probably did, and we probably had to absorb that because they weren't going to eliminate that under any circumstances for that car. So there's never a 100% rule in granite, but I always treat my customers like I want them to get the best value. I want them to have the best feeling about it. I always flatter them in figuring that they've done their due diligence, and maybe some of them haven't, but I treat them like they're an educated consumer. They may very well have interviewed other agents. So I don't shy away from comparing my services because I feel like I'm a superior agent, and it'll be a win-win situation, and my customers will be very happy in utilizing my skill set and integrity. And I always try to maximize the education that I give my customers. So that's a little bit about kind of my philosophy with fees and such. As you know, real estate commissions are fully negotiable. And the reason the commissions come to mind is I had a couple situations recently with commissions that I think you might find interesting. The first one was I represented a buyer on a closing that took place a couple weeks ago. It was on a higher end home. And the commission they offering was mediocre to the buyer side. Because this was an old customer of mine and a customer that I had a long-standing relationship with, I didn't ask the customer to assist in the payment of additional commission, because now with the real estate laws, when you sign up a buyer on a buyer representation agreement, there's discussion of commissions and what could happen if the seller is offering a substandard commission. Frequently, the seller loses business by doing that, but that's a topic for another conversation. So on this deal, when I actually got the closing statement, I saw that the listing agent was making more than I did. And my buyer asked me about that. He said, well, why are the commissions different on this one? So I explained to him that legally the listing agent could pay themselves more than the buyer's agent, or they could pay themselves less than the buyer's agent. That was an individual decision. I have my own philosophy about that, and I've tried to make it a point that I don't offer the buyer's agents less than I make, because I think it leaves a bad taste in the buyer's agent's mouth. And I want buyer's agents to know if they're dealing with my listings, they're going to get 100% fair shake. But what that agent did wasn't anything illegal. That was just the way they chose to do business on that transaction. I could have certainly told my buyer that they were going to have to compensate me additionally at an agreed upon amount. And if we couldn't agree, then we probably wouldn't show that listing, because, the buyer had a contract with me to buy the house within a certain time frame and or compensate me if the seller wasn't adequately compensating me. But fortunately, we didn't run into that issue. The second thing was, I've got a closing taking place next week on a challenging property that I'm selling the only one out of 18 properties that are for sale in the neighborhood because of some aggressive and hopefully beneficial techniques that I proposed that the sellers agreed to. So on that particular deal, I got the preliminary ALTA yesterday, and I saw that the buyer was paying their buyer's agent additional commission, which again is perfectly legal. I was offering an average commission on that property in terms of what our total commission was, and I divided it in half. But with that particular company, they felt that their services warranted more money. So per the buyer's agency agreement, they got the buyer's agent to pay them more money. Again, nothing illegal or unethical about that. I hadn't seen that much since we went to these new real estate laws a year plus ago, but I'm sure there's some instances where that does occur for various reasons. So again, it always pays to educate your consumer. When customers ask me about my commissions, besides obviously telling them that what my fees are, I explain to them in detail how I've arrived at that and what the legal consequences are of different courses of action. So that's the real estate for today. Hopefully that's a little different take than maybe you've heard before. Deviating quickly to sports. Last night in the American and National League final series leading up to the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays have won the last two games on the road and have tied up the series with the Seattle Mariners 2-2. Interestingly, in that series, all four teams that won games have been on the road, which is unusual in baseball playoffs. In the National League, the Los Angeles Dodgers beat the Milwaukee Brewers 3-0, and they're looking to wrap the series up today. So I think it's pretty safe to say it would be a huge major upset if the Dodgers lost this series. Only once in the history of the playoffs has a team lost a 3-0 series lead, and that was in 2004 with the famous series between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. The Red Sox were losing 3-0 and ended up winning the series 4-3. It's the only time that's ever happened in baseball. So that's all about baseball. Last night in football, a game down to the wire. The Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. I play fantasy football, as I may have mentioned in previous discussions. So I had good and bad results last night. I had one of the receivers for Cincinnati that did quite good, so that was a good thing. I had the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, who played like they were shorthanded because their defense was just horrible. And Cincinnati was going through them like they had a piñata. But anyway, that's football for you. It's a week-to-week game, and a lot of the games are very close, but it was entertaining to watch. So that's all for today. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and this is Marty Kaiser out.